Important for me to know a world beyond the ones I had been exposed to. So it complements each other, and I don't hate it. I actually love working in development. I loved it, especially the working out in the when I could just stay somewhere like Chittagong Hill Tracks or somewhere for a month and learn and so forth. I think it's given me a lot of experience that I otherwise wouldn't have.
And when you talked about the work you did with traveling around, seeing parts of Bangladesh that many of us from a particular circle don't.
Right.
I mean, could you tell us a bit more about that experience, going to these
Sure.
remote areas?
Do you want a happy or a sad or just an experience? Okay, I'll start with this. Let's see. Okay, so coming back, I didn't have a lot of friends, right? Because I moved so much. I moved back and forth. So all my friends were new, and they were from a certain background, and they didn't get out much. A lot of them. So here I was, I'd come back, off to Sundarban, off to this, and I took this one Sundarban trip. I remember, and it was with 2 government officials and 3 of my work colleagues plus 2 other consultants. And it was on this boat called Bonrani, which was made in 1905 for James Conrad to do his research in the Sundarbans. So I was really excited, and apparently the King of Iceland had stayed there before us. So it was like talked up so much, and I was so excited. So we get there, and beautiful day, and it was during the time of Ramadan, and I was waiting to sort of go into the room, but it was so beautiful, I was outside for a while. Anyway, by the time we got they were showing where we were staying, they didn't know where to put me, so it was a stock room. And, and it was this sort of very, like a hard situation that I had to deal with. But then in retrospect, that was actually one of my most favorite Sundarban trip, because I accepted whatever, I mean, if you can think from different perspectives and sort of like it or not and say, okay, I don't want to stay here or not, because the other rooms were AC, but they were doubles and they were all men, so I couldn't share. So it taught me how to sort of adapt in situations like that, which otherwise, I wouldn't. And when I came back and told my friends, they thought I was insane. I also got typhoid when I came back, but that's another story. Nothing, it was, it's my own fault.
When you say stock room, what exactly do you mean?
Okay, that's where there was a fridge, there was a mid-safe, and on top of the mid-safe they put in the godi to the mattress and a little moshery, a mosquito net. And then it was during Ramadan, so they would knock at like 4 a.m. and walk in and take food, return food. So it was this really blending in with the community and also being a woman working in development. I think those are the things you have to face and you have to be ready for. A few of my friends said you should have just thrown a fit and said, no, I'm not gonna do this, and just sort of, whatever, and walk away. But I don't think that's always a good idea. I think it's always a good idea to push yourself and go through it and see how you like it. If you don't like it, absolutely don't like it, you can obviously do that. I can't do it. But giving it a chance and not always thinking that, because those guys really did not know where to put me. At least they're trying. So, a lot of situations come up like that when you're out there working with people who are not used to working with women or accommodating women. And I think that's something that you have to also understand and help them in the process. And I think I did my part, and I'm glad I did it the way I did it.
Akshay, you seem like you want to ask a question.
So how did you complete what you did like the degree?
Oh no, I shouldn't have talked about not liking my undergrad. How did I complete it?
Yeah.
I kept up the GPA and I made friends with other engineering students. I think it always helped me to sort of understand that I wasn't the only one who was having a hard time with it. Yeah, sorry.
I think you are surrounded by people who also create the same experience, so it becomes really hard to
Make it through?
Yeah.
I think,
Burn the department.
yeah, should have done that but didn't. I think for me, it was necessity. My mother had money for 4 years of college. She paid for room and board. I got a scholarship, a women's scholarship, and I knew that if I switched and I went to another program, I would lose the scholarship, which means I wouldn't get an education. So it was really out of necessity. I knew that, this is where we had stayed back here. So I must finish, I must have the scholarship. And so sometimes it's just that thought, and then you adjust to it. And I've adjusted a lot, but it's helped. I think it helps to have that sort of mindset. If you can afford it. If I could actually switch and I had that situation, circumstances, I would, but I didn't.
But you never felt like just dropping out of college and running away to some other country?
Oh yeah, I felt like that a lot. Yeah. But
and how did you work through that?
I slept instead and dreamt. Yeah.
Any other advice?
Related to this.
Sorry, I did have one question. You mentioned sort of the difficulties of being a woman working in development here in Bangladesh, but did you ever have any problems in sort of the DC world, especially the last 10 years with any kind of glass ceilings, or just trying to establish yourself as a young woman
Yeah, it's everywhere really, but I didn't think about it so much there because it's more apparent here, right? Because there it's more sophisticated perhaps, and here it's a bit on you just know what's going on sometimes. But I have to say, the project I was working with, I came here as the head of communication, and then I ended as a second in command, as the deputy chief of party. So that was a success, right? So when people told me that don't adjust, don't give in to the situation, they will just think you're being a pushover, or being a girl. It's not true, really. It's just showing that you're resilient and you can do this. And it was a proof with the promotion that that's really how people took it, that you love your work and you're going to do it and you're going to put it through. So in a way, Bangladesh gave me. I did not get that kind of a promotion outside, but in Bangladesh I could, because I think when you're challenged, you end up going a little farther.
Any other questions? I'll start cold calling. Yes.
It's not related to the deal, but how are you connected to the orange theory?
My friend Anika Mariam Ahmed, she's a lovely, lovely person who designs these jewelries. So for those who don't know Orange Theory, it's this, a friend of mine started a jewelry line and I modeled for it. There's a reason why I did, because every single of her piece actually is a statement that really goes with the things I'm saying, the things a lot of us believe in, women and men and Bangladeshis of this generation, let it be secularism or bringing back certain emotions from the past and just putting it back again to show us that this is what we were raised with and you can't really let go of this one, or cherish it. So I really liked the feeling that Orange Theory work created, so I said yes to doing that.
I love their jewelry and I have been stalking them for over a year. And I really love the new collection. I go back all the time and just check them out. And I saw your pictures all over there and I was curious, are you one of the designers?
I am not, but I have given ideas that were taken. So we actually get together and come up with ideas that might be nice to make statements and wear. And so I think, and there are others like Orange Theory that are doing that too, which is really cool.
Any other questions? Yes.
I heard that your mother stopped calling when you want to be in Bangladesh.
Mhm.
She stopped you from going here, and does she still trying to say against you? And does she ever come back here?
She does come here. She comes about once a year. She's not, it's a really interesting thing. But first when I came, she was okay, because it was for 3 months. And then when I said, then I knew if I came back, it would have to be with something that she was like, okay, she's going for it was a proper way of going, not just going and saying, oh, let's see what happens. So she was fine with that. This year, though, it's been interesting because she's like, why are you staying back still? What's up? But she, at the same time, she envies me a little too. She's like, I wish I could do that. So she is worried really about my safety. We text in the morning and we text at night to make sure that I'm home and safe or wherever I am okay. And that's sort of, she lives with that assurance from me. If she had her way, she would probably want me back home. And but at the same time, she knows I'm too stubborn to listen to anyone, which is sad, but I'm good at the same time, I guess. So she's trusting me with my instincts right now.
Initially, did you tell us that she didn't want to come to Bangladesh herself? Like, so now you're saying that she comes about once a year, but initially was there a certain resistance or avoidance of Bangladesh?
There was. The Bangladesh that my mother knew was a lot through my father. They were next door neighbors, and they first met when my mom was 8 and my father was 11 or 12. So, they were like childhood friends, and then they started dating right before the war. So my mom was 13 and he was 16, and I don't know, have you guys seen that film called Gorilla that was made about Sector 2? So that was you remember there was a scene, they did this newsletter or information. My father was an informer basically during the war. So he would print this paper stuff and whatnot. So they had lived through, my mother lived through all of this through my dad. I mean, she lived vicariously through my father, basically. My father would write these letters to her about what was going on during the war, slip it in, and their love affair actually became stronger during the wartime. And then they got married so early, and the world that she knew had so much to do with my father. My mother is the ninth child, but she has 8 siblings before her, and so she's the youngest, and this is the second marriage of my grandfather. So she had always this sort of a survival's instinct from a very young age, and I think she looked at my father for that sort of support and like loved the world that he had shown, and she really doesn't know how to accept the world here in Dhaka that lacks my father. So I am also, I think, if I come to a place where she feels comfortable to come back, that would be a success of mine, because she really loves being here, and she's a very Bengali in heart, and she misses so many things. She reads Prothomalo every day sitting there, and Daily Star, and whatever else. She knows more news than people here sometimes, and so she's really connected, and she's really into literature and poetry, and she studied Bangla literature, so it's very much in her. So maybe my next goal is to get somewhere where she can actually come back here, feel comfortable and confident being here and living, seeing the world through my eyes, her daughter's eyes. Next. Yes, that'd be wonderful.
Sarah?
Yes, when you started your professional career, did you have mentors? And if so, how did you find them?
I would not have gone far without mentors. I think it really matters who you work for and who you're working with, and I was really lucky in that sense. I had very strong people around in all the jobs I had worked in. I couldn't actually be in a place or a team where I didn't connect with the people, and I was lucky. So my first job, I had a great boss who taught me things that were, more traditional, I would say. But it sort of got me started. But then the management skills and how people manage and what's expected. Coming from the Bangladeshi background, we do a lot of yes, 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 and like not to say yes all the time. Understand when you should stand up for, be confident about what you're thinking, things like that. I think having that career in the US really helped kind of understand what you're voicing and why you should voice it, and these mentors throughout I had to mention two people, Christine Powers and Monica Evans. They were just two bosses of mine that changed my entire working style and really helped.
Any other questions? I have one last question, which is, I mean, you sort of touched on this, but it seems like we share something in common, which is that we didn't really grow up in Bangladesh, but now we feel as if we can't leave. There's something that's holding us here. So for you, what would you say that is?
Holding me back here. It's really the place and the connection. I mean, I still enjoy rain. I still find happiness in corners. The rickshawala in the morning that I'm getting on a rickshaw and the smile that he gives me, or the interaction that happens in every day with everyone is so much, because I'm here alone. So if I say I'm alone, then it feels worse. But then what keeps me here if I'm alone? Why should I leave and be with my family, just friends here? It's not just the friends I have, it's really the rest. Because friends will be there even if I move away. But the place and that dog at the corner of the street, or the man who sells tea, all of that still makes me happy and keeps me here because I want to learn more. And there's so many people here to get to know, and so much energy. I think I'm a little addicted to that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
IFFAT, thank you so much for doing this talk. IFFAT had told me that she'd be coming with Zia, and I said, I'd really have loved to invite you at some point to do a talk, but I guess this is too short notice, or is it? Right? And at that point she said, I'll do the talk, so thank you so much. Okay. So next we have Zia Haider Rahman, and I'm not going to do the introduction because I think that Fahmida really deserves to have this honor, so I'm going to pass it over to Fahmida.
Okay, so there are two things I would like to say about this whole thing. So I first heard about Mr. Rahman in June. I came to Chittagong for a visit to my friend's place, and he told me about this guy who wrote a book, and everyone is talking about him. And I was like, yeah, someone who went to Oxford, Cambridge and Yale decides to write a book, everyone is going to talk about him. But then I read his interviews. I read the book review, and then I kept reading all his interviews. I think I have finished all of them, all the interviews. I'm reading the book, and then there are so many things from the interview I loved. There are so many quotes, but then I was like, okay, why not? I heard that he is coming to the HAY festival, and I was like, why not inviting him to AEW? So I approached Sarah Amin and then Professor Sar Shahabuddin later, and she said, reach out to him if he is interested, then why not? So I tried everything. I tried Googling, I tried emailing people, I tried Facebook, and I didn't find his contact information anywhere. But I follow him on Twitter, and he follows me on Twitter too. I have only 14 people who follows me, and he is one of them. And then at the last try, I said, okay, I'm sure he's not going to reply, but at least I can say I tried. I sent him the text, and then he replied within 20 minutes. And thank you for being so kind. That's the story. And then like months of emailing people and introduction to new people, and finally here we are. I would like to thank Ms. IFFAT and Mr. Rahman for being here today. As for his background, he was born in Bangladesh, and his family moved to London when he was a boy. He went to Cambridge, Oxford and Yale universities. Obviously he's really talented. He also worked as an investment banker and as an international human rights lawyer before he wrote this book. And in the light of what we know is his first book, and it has been described as a everything book by Salman Rushdie. So I think I would let him talk about himself.
I can't imagine a better introduction. That's fantastic. I do get lots of emails, and I do get lots of. I follow anybody who follows me on Twitter. I follow them. I've had a Twitter account since September 2009. Probably there. I have not tweeted once, but I have 450 followers, and most of those in the last 6 months since the book came out. Are you happy? Good. Okay. But I want to just before I talk, give you my tale. I just want to pause on one thing that Famida said, which could be the best lesson any of us takes away from these couple of hours. Famida said, "I'm sure he won't reply, but at least I can say I tried." I think Famida, when I got her email, I was struck. I'd received an email from a student at Yale, an undergraduate student, and the email was rude. It was presuming that the person was entitled to a response from me, when obviously I'm very busy. Famida framed it as a request not for her, but for us. And she was polite, and she put herself in my shoes. So it'll be fine. We'll work it out, okay? Just wash it. Okay. And so yes, it only took me 20 minutes. I made myself a cup of tea, and yeah, of course I was going to say yes. And I'm really glad I said. And I was glad when I saw you at the airport. I knew I'd done the right thing already then. Where to begin? Well, maybe I should give you a sketch of my. Why are you laughing? Do you think I'm a comedian? Yeah, I'll give you a sketch, a thumbnail sketch of my tale. I was born in Bangladesh, in Sylhet, and I moved with my family shortly after the war. Can you hear me out there? Just shout. If any of you can't, at the back, if you can't hear me, just shout. Sometimes I start saying, if I'm talking about personal things, my voice can drop. All right? No, seriously. So just shout, speak up. No, so yeah, we left after the war. I was very small, and we moved to the UK. I'm from peasant stock. My father is, not in the pejorative sense, but he's a peasant. He was, and my mother and father moved to a squat. A squat, as you know, is a derelict building. And my parents moved into that, 2 rooms in the basement of a house with an outside lavatory. And I can't remember one half of one room. And that room was the kitchen. I can't remember, I can call to mind the other room, the whole of it, and one half of one room. But there's a half of one room I can't remember at all. And if you've read my novel, you'll know that that's because there were rats in it. We moved from that squat to what's called social housing in America, or the projects, and called a council estate in London. There's a massive roach. Okay, there you go. That's a strong woman there, ladies and gentlemen. You just crushed a cockroach.
You brought special effects along with your story.
Yeah, just perfect timing. Yeah. So we moved, and we lived in those circumstances on a council estate until I was 16. Now here's the other. So the first lucky thing was that we moved from Sylhet, from rural Sylhet, not destitution, but certainly not landed gentry, but so the first piece of luck, the first lucky break was to move to London, where there's street lighting, healthcare, public education, so on and so forth. The second piece of luck was that I was very clever. I didn't choose that. I had, even as a child, I had high intelligence. I didn't have to work very hard to get it, to understand mathematics. And so I didn't earn that. I didn't choose that. And that was a big piece of luck. But it was that combination, and yes, there was hard work. That came later, in my teens. When I began to, well, not teens, after 10, when I began to understand that there was a certain kind of life that awaited me if I didn't make an effort. I was very aware of the unfairnesses, I still am, I'm very keenly aware of the unfairnesses in the world and even in a place like the UK. My accent sounds very posh, I'm sure, right? Yeah? It's completely phony. It's completely phony. When I was a boy, I realized that in Britain, your accent carries a lot of weight. It matters. People change the way they behave. Their behavior towards you is dependent on how you sound. So I used to tape record the BBC newsreaders, and I'd play it back to myself. It was a very strange boy. And so this voice, my siblings, they all have very normal London accents, but I have this bizarre, very plummy. I have friends who say, when I hear you, I think, Prince Charles coming. So I wanted to escape poverty. My sister and I, we were in that squat at the beginning, and that was ever present in my thoughts, that's where I could end up. But actually, I achieved all my ambitions in life pretty much at the age of 14, 15. When I took some maths exams early, and I got perfect scores. Because my ambition was not to be hungry again. That was it. And when I got those scores, I knew that actually I'm not going to be hungry again. So yeah, so what happened then? Well, after A-levels, I sat an Oxford entrance exam, and I did very well. And I was very lucky, again, because I was talented. This is important, This is important. Don't let people develop these stories, these narratives about their lives, especially the rich, the affluent, and the powerful. Stories about how they deserve what they have, right? That's rubbish. There's a lot of rubbish about in this idea of deserving. Very much, actually the science bears it out, very much of what happens, very much of our achievements are attributable to external circumstances and internal circumstances outside our control. Genes and environmental conditions. There is a part that you can control, right? There are things that you can teach yourself not to be afraid. For me, there's not afraid. At least I'll know I've tried. Fear of failure, I've seen that so often. I see that all the time, in fact. I don't want to risk disappointment. So I went to Oxford, and then after Oxford, I went to Cambridge, and I went to Munich University. I had scholarships, one after another. I didn't pay for any of my education. I feel a little embarrassed about that. No, I do. I mean, it's a remarkable thing that there was so much, opportunity available to me. But those opportunities are still out there, especially in the States. I went to Munich, I went to Cambridge, and I went to Yale. And studied various subjects, mathematics, economics, law. I held graduate degrees in them. And I was headhunted by Goldman Sachs, which is an investment bank in New York. And I went along for an interview. It was a very surreal experience. What is Ziya Haider Rahman from, what is he doing here in Wall Street, you know? I remember sitting on the 26th floor of 85 Broad Street, which is where Goldman Sachs used to be located, and looking out the window and seeing the Statue of Liberty and thinking, what the heck is a Sylhetic villager doing here? You know? I don't think it's wrong, I just